You know what's fascinating? Right now, as you sit there, your body is performing millions of functions without you even thinking about it. Your heart is beating, your lungs are breathing, your blood is flowing through thousands of miles of vessels. Yet somehow, when it comes to working on ourselves as human beings, we act like it's optional. We act like growth is something that happens to other people, or something we'll get around to someday when we have more time. But here's what I want you to understand tonight. The person you are right now, sitting in that chair, is not the person you have to be tomorrow. And more importantly, the person you are tomorrow doesn't have to be the person you are next week, or next month, or next year. You see, we've been led to believe that we're fixed, that our personalities are set in stone, that our habits are permanent fixtures of who we are. But that's simply not true. Think about this for a moment. When you were 5 years old, you couldn't tie your shoes, you couldn't read, you couldn't write your name, you couldn't ride a bicycle. But you learned these things through daily practice, through falling down and getting back up, through the simple act of working on yourself every single day. So why do we stop? Why do we reach a certain age and suddenly decide that we're done growing, done learning, done becoming? I want to tell you about something that happened in a small town, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone. There was a man who worked at the local factory, same job for 20 years, same routine every single day. He'd wake up at 6, eat the same breakfast, drive the same route to work, punch the same time clock, and come home to the same evening routine. His neighbors would say he was reliable, steady, a good man. But inside, he felt like he was slowly disappearing. One day, walking past the town library, he noticed something he'd never seen before, even though he'd passed that building thousands of times. There was a small sign that read, "Adult Education Classes." Something stirred in him, something he hadn't felt in years. He walked in and signed up for a basic arithmetic class, something he'd struggled with since childhood. The first night, he felt foolish sitting among people half his age, his hand shaking as he held the pencil, but he kept going night after night, week after week. And something remarkable began to happen, not just with his math skills, but with everything else. He started noticing things differently. He began reading books. He started having conversations with his wife that went beyond the weather and what was for dinner. His co-workers noticed a change in him, a kind of energy they'd never seen before. He wasn't just learning arithmetic. He was learning that he could learn. He was discovering that the person he thought he was just the person he had been. Now, I want you to ask yourself something, and I want you to be honest. When was the last time you deliberately worked on yourself? When was the last time you consciously set out to become better than you were the day before? I don't mean when you made a New Year's resolution that you forgot by February. I mean when you made a commitment to yourself to grow, to learn, to become more than you currently are. You see, most people live their lives like passengers on a train. They get on, they find a seat, and they let the train take them wherever it's going. They look out the window, they complain about the scenery, they wish they were somewhere else, but they never consider that they could be the engineer of their own train. They never realize that they have the power to choose the destination, to chart the course, to determine where they end up. But working on yourself every day means becoming the engineer of your own life. It means taking responsibility not just for where you are, but for where you're going. It means understanding that every single day you have a choice. You can be the same person you were yesterday, or you can be a slightly better version of that person. And those small improvements, those tiny daily upgrades, they compound over time in ways that will absolutely astound you. Think about a farmer planting seeds. He doesn't plant them and expect to harvest the next day. He understands that growth is a process that requires patience, consistency, and faith. He waters those seeds every day, even when he can't see any visible progress. He tends to the soil, he removes the weeds, he protects the young plants from harsh weather. Day after day, with no immediate reward, he continues the work. And then one day he looks out and sees a field of golden wheat, worth more than he could have imagined when he planted those tiny seeds. Your personal growth works exactly the same way. Every day you work on yourself, you're planting seeds. Every book you read, every skill you practice, every habit you improve, every fear you face, you're tending to the garden of your own potential. And just like that farmer, you might not see immediate results. You might wonder if it's worth it. You might be tempted to give up when the progress seems slow. But here's what I need you to understand about this process, and this is crucial. The work you do on yourself today doesn't just benefit you today. It benefits you tomorrow, next week, next month, and for the rest of your life. When you learn something new, When you develop a new skill, when you overcome a limitation, you don't just add that to your life for a moment. You add it forever. It becomes part of who you are, part of your arsenal for facing whatever life throws at you. There was a woman who lived in a small apartment above a bakery. Every morning she would wake up to the smell of fresh bread, and every morning she would look in the mirror and see the same tired, defeated face looking back at her. She worked as a seamstress, doing the same patterns day after day, making just enough to pay her bills and buy groceries. She had dreams once, dreams of traveling, of learning languages, of seeing the world beyond her small town. But somewhere along the way, she had convinced herself that dreams were for other people, younger people, people with advantages she didn't have. One evening, feeling particularly low, she found herself in the town's small bookstore. She picked up a book about learning languages, something she'd always wanted to do but never thought she could. The book was old, worn, marked down to just a few dollars. She bought it, almost by accident, and that night, instead of staring at the ceiling, worrying about her problems, she opened it and began to read. The book suggested starting with just 15 minutes a day, just 15 minutes. She thought she could manage that. So she began, stumbling over pronunciations, forgetting words, feeling foolish, but she kept going. After a month, she could introduce herself in a foreign language. After 3 months, she could have a simple conversation. After 6 months, she was corresponding with people from other countries, learning about their cultures, their lives, their dreams. But something even more remarkable happened. As she learned this new language, she began to see herself differently. She started walking taller, speaking more confidently, engaging with people in ways she never had before. She began to realize that if she could learn a language, maybe she could learn other things too. She started reading about history, about art, about places she'd only dreamed of visiting. She began saving money, not just for bills, but for goals. 2 years later, she took her first trip abroad. She stood in a foreign city speaking to locals in their own language, and she realized something profound. She was no longer the same person who had looked in that mirror with defeat in her eyes. She hadn't just learned a language, she had learned that she was capable of learning. She hadn't just planned a trip, she had learned that she was capable of making her dreams reality. Now you might be thinking, that's a nice story, but I'm not interested in learning languages. But you're missing the point. The language wasn't the real goal. The real goal was discovering that she was more than she thought she was. The real goal was proving to herself that she could grow, that she could change, that she could become something more. And that's what working on yourself every day really means. It's not about becoming perfect. It's not about achieving some impossible standard. It's about proving to yourself, one day at a time, that you are more capable, more resilient, more intelligent, more creative than you ever imagined. It's about building evidence of your own potential. Think about this for a moment. Every time you do something that challenges you, every time you push yourself just a little bit beyond your comfort zone, you're building what I call success evidence. You're creating a track record of accomplishment that your mind can refer to when facing new challenges. You're literally rewiring your brain to believe in your own capabilities. But here's where most people go wrong. They wait for the perfect moment to start. They wait until they have more time, more money, more energy, more support. They wait until the conditions are ideal. But conditions are never ideal. There will always be obstacles, always be excuses, always be reasons to postpone your growth until tomorrow. The truth is, the perfect time to start working on yourself is right now, with whatever you have, wherever you are. You don't need special equipment. You don't need permission. You don't need anyone else's approval. You just need to make the decision that today, this very day, you're going to do something, anything, to become a little bit better than you were yesterday. Maybe it's reading for 30 minutes instead of watching television. Maybe it's taking a walk instead of sitting on the couch. Maybe it's having a real conversation with someone instead of just exchanging pleasantries. Maybe it's learning something new, trying something different, facing something you've been avoiding. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as it moves you forward, as long as it helps you grow. Because here's what I want you to remember as we continue this journey together. You are not a finished product. You are not a completed project. You are a work in progress, a masterpiece in the making, a story that's still being written. And every day, with every choice you make, you get to decide what the next chapter looks like. But let me ask you something else, and I want you to really think about this. What would your life look like if you'd been working on yourself every single day for the past 5 years? What if, instead of letting days slip by in routine and complacency, you had committed to growing just a little bit each day? What skills would you have? What knowledge would you possess? What confidence would you carry? What dreams would you have already achieved? I know that might be a painful question to consider. It might make you feel regret about time you think you've wasted. But I don't want you to dwell on that regret. I want you to use it as fuel. Because if you're disappointed about where you could have been, that tells me something important about you. It tells me that you have higher expectations for yourself. It tells me that you believe you're capable of more. And that belief, that dissatisfaction with settling for less than your potential, that's the beginning of real transformation. And let me tell you about a man who understood this principle better than almost anyone. He was a carpenter, a good one, but not exceptional. He built houses, fixed cabinets, did the kind of work that kept food on the table, but didn't set the world on fire. But this man had a habit that set him apart from every other carpenter in town. Every evening after his regular work was done, he would spend 1 hour in his workshop, not working on paying jobs, but working on himself. He would practice new techniques, experiment with different tools, try to solve problems that had been bothering him. He would study the work of master craftsmen, not just looking at their finished products, but trying to understand how they thought, how they approached their craft. He would challenge himself with projects that were just beyond his current skill level, projects that forced him to learn and grow. His fellow workers thought he was crazy. They would finish their jobs and go home to rest, to drink beer, to complain about their bosses and their customers. They couldn't understand why he would choose to spend more time working when he could be relaxing. But this man understood something they didn't. He understood that the hour he spent working on himself was the most important hour of his day. It was the hour that would determine not just what kind of carpenter he would be tomorrow, but what kind of man he would become. Over the years, something remarkable happened. Word began to spread about the quality of his work. People would seek him out specifically, willing to pay premium prices for his craftsmanship. He began to get commissions for custom work, pieces that challenged his creativity and skill. Eventually, he was able to open his own shop, hire other workers, and build a business that supported not just his own family, but several others as well. But here's the most important part of this story. The success, the recognition, the financial rewards, those were just the external results. The real transformation happened inside him. Through those daily hours of working on himself, he had developed something that no one could take away from him. He had developed the confidence that comes from knowing you can learn anything, solve any problem, overcome any obstacle. He had developed the patience that comes from understanding that mastery takes time. He had developed the wisdom that comes from consistent practice and reflection. And that's what I want you to understand about working on yourself every day. It's not really about the specific skills you learn or the particular goals you achieve. It's about who you become in the process. It's about the strength you build, the character you develop, the unshakable belief in your own capabilities that grows stronger with every challenge you face and overcome. You see, most people think that confidence comes from success. They believe that once they achieve something big, once they reach some important milestone, then they'll feel confident. But that's backwards. Confidence doesn't come from success. Success comes from confidence. And confidence comes from the daily practice of proving to yourself that you can do difficult things, that you can learn new skills, that you can grow beyond your current limitations. Every day you work on yourself, you're making a deposit in the bank of your own self-respect. Every time you choose growth over comfort, learning over laziness, challenge over ease, you're building the foundation of an unshakable belief in your own worth and potential. And that foundation, that rock-solid knowledge that you are capable of more than you've ever imagined, that's what will carry you through every storm life throws your way. So tonight, as you leave this room and return to your life, remember this. Tomorrow morning, you will wake up as the same person you are today unless you decide otherwise. You have a choice to make, not just tomorrow, but every single day for the rest of your life. Will you be a passenger on the train of your own existence, or will you take hold of the controls? Will you settle for who you are today, or will you commit to becoming who you know you can be? The choice is yours. The time is now. Work on yourself every day